Have you been feeling emotionally heavier lately? Maybe you are sleeping but still feeling tired. You are functionally normal, but somehow everything feels like an effort. Old memories are coming back. You are questioning decisions you were completely sure about before. And sometimes you do not even know why you are feeling this way. Astrology would say Saturn has gone retrograde. But here is what I find fascinating as a psychologist. What astrology describes symbolically as a period of reflection, restriction, and inner confrontation, psychology can explain through some very real processes of the human mind. So today I'm not going to tell you that Saturn is causing your anxiety or depression. Instead, we're going to explore something much more interesting, that you have not heard this before in the whole internet, because I have searched it everywhere. Why periods associated with Saturn retrograde can feel psychologically heavy, and how you can actually use this phase for emotional growth. First of all, I want to say that Saturn retrograde is not a punishment. Let's start this with the biggest misconception. Saturn is not the planet that comes to punish you. In astrology, Saturn represents structure, responsibilities, boundaries, discipline, consequences, maturity, time. And when Saturn appears to move backward, what we call retrograde, it is traditionally associated with review, reflection, revisiting your karmas, your unfinished lessons. Now forget astrology for a moment. Think about your own psychology first. Have you ever noticed that the moment you finally slow down, your mind suddenly becomes louder? A memory that you have not thought about in years appears. A relationship you thought you were over suddenly bothers you. You start questioning your choices, your career, your old insecurities returns. Have you ever wondered why this is happening? Because when external distractions become quieter, your internal material becomes easier to notice. That is the reason why people love crowd, and that is where psychology and astrology begins to overlap very beautifully. Because what happens, your brain doesn't like unfinished business. There is a fascinating phenomenon in psychology that is called the Zeigarnik Effect. Psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik observed that unfinished tasks tend to remain more mentally active than complicated ones. Now, emotional experiences are not exactly the same as unfinished tasks, but the broader principle is useful. Our minds do not always neatly close emotional chapters just because we have stopped talking about them. You can leave a relationship without emotionally leaving it, because it is there within you. You can forgive someone without processing what happened. You can change your entire life without changing the beliefs you developed during the old one. So here you are just changing your superficial mask, but your underneath emotions are there within you. And sometimes life becomes quite enough for those unresolved experiences to surface again. यही वजह है कि healing कभी-कभी progress जैसी feel नहीं होती. Sometimes healing feels like going backward. You may simply be seeing something you are previously too distracted, too overwhelmed, or too emotionally unprepared to see those things. But have you wondered why Saturn feels so heavy? Because Saturn symbolism is interesting, as it deals with things we generally do not enjoy. No one enjoy Saturn because it represents limits, responsibilities, delays, reality, discipline. And psychologically, human beings do not naturally enjoy confronting limitations. What humans prefer are possibilities. We prefer certainty. We prefer immediate rewards. That is why Saturn's archetype can feel uncomfortable. It asks what is actually sustainable, not what do you want right now. Saturn is not your immediate gratification, but what can you realistically build and maintain? And that question can trigger anxiety because suddenly you are forced to look at the gap between who you are, who you thought you would become, and who you are actually becoming. Psychologist Tory Higgins called this kind of tension self-discrepancy. The psychological discomfort that can arise when there is a gap between our actual self and our ideal or expected self. And honestly, that is where Saturn becomes incredibly interesting. Saturn has always been understood symbolically as the inner authority, that voice inside you saying, you should be doing more, you are behind, you should have figured this out by now, everyone else is moving ahead. And here is where we need to be careful. There is a difference between discipline and self-punishment. Healthy Saturn says, take responsibility for your life. Unhealthy Saturn says, everything that's wrong with your life is your fault. Those are completely different psychological positions. But if this period is making your inner critic louder, do not automatically believe it. Instead, become curious about it and ask yourself, whose voice is this? Was it something you were taught, your parents' expectation, or might be a social standard, or a past failure, a version of yourself you created years ago, and now it is not there. You are completely a new version now. Because sometimes what we call our conscience is actually an old fear wearing the voice of authority. So how do you use this period? This is where I want to move away from predictions and to our transformation. Because this is the best period you use to transform your own self and to become your best version. If Saturn retrograde is a symbolic period of review, then do not use it to ask what bad thing is going to happen to me. Instead, ask yourself what pattern is asking to be understood. If you are not using this time to recognize your patterns, then believe me, you will regret it later. Maybe it is your relationship with work. Maybe it is your relationship with your own self. Maybe it is your need for control or people pleasing. Maybe it is constantly proving yourself or staying busy because silence makes you uncomfortable. You don't want to face your inner self. So what can you do? Take a journal and ask yourself 3 questions like, what keeps repeating in my life? And you sit with yourself in silence, then I am sure you will get the answer. You will recognize the pattern. Second, what emotion do I keep avoiding? Because most of the time we do not face the emotions that are uncomfortable, right? And third one, what responsibility I am ready to take without blaming myself. Do not blame yourself for anything that you have already done in your past. You think those are mistakes because we are humans. Do not judge yourself. Do not blame yourself. But do not repeat the same pattern again and again. Heal yourself and take time for yourself. Do not try to fix everything. just observe, because awareness comes before transformation, the Saturn shift. And here's the psychological shift I want you to take from this entire video. Stop asking why this is happening to me and start asking, what is this experience showing me about myself? That's a completely different relationship with difficulty. Astrology may describe Saturn as a period of karmic lesson, maturity, restructuring. Psychology might describe the same experience as increased self-awareness, emotional processing, and behavioral change. You do not have to choose one language, you can use both. And believe me, if you use both, then you will see a completely new version of yourself. Astrology tells us where to look, psychology helps us understand what we are seeing, and self-awareness gives us the power to change it. If you are not self-aware, then you will again repeat the same mistakes in your life. So if you have been feeling heavier lately, do not immediately assume that something is wrong with you. Maybe something inside you is simply asking to be heard. Saturn is not asking you to become harder. It is asking you to become more honest. You must adore your authenticity. It is asking you to become more authentic version of yourself. And sometimes the most powerful transformation is not becoming something new. It is finally becoming conscious of the person you have been underneath all the survival patterns. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because Saturn doesn't activate the same psychological themes for everyone. Your ascendant determines which house Saturn is moving through in your chart, and that tells us where this inner restructuring may shows off. In my next video, I'm going to take you ascendant by ascendant and decode what Saturn retrograde may be asking you to look at psychologically, and more importantly, how you can transform through it. So if you are an Aries ascendant, start with the next video, because Saturn is currently moving through your 12th house, and what it means psychologically is amazing. Welcome to Sniggy Speaks, where psychology helps you understand your mind, astrology helps you see the patterns, and self-awareness helps you transform them. So if you are interested in these topics, then do follow, and see you in my next video. Bye-bye.